Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us on LinkedIn today for this 8th edition of France versus California. And today we will focus on the wine industry and preparing the future of the wine industry. So thank you very much. Welcome. Feel free to ask any question in the chat or ask anything to our speakers. Just a short presentation. So I'm Laurence. I'm the Executive Director of the French-American Chamber of Commerce in San Francisco. Our mission is to build bridges between France and California and to help companies to set up their activities here. So we do a lot of events, of course, and of digital events. And this year, as we have also the COVID crisis, we do a lot of digital, and we decided to partner with channels to get a broader audience also in France, and also to bring speakers from France and from California. And we decided to launch this session, France versus Silicon Valley, or France versus California. And this is the 8th edition, so we're really happy to welcome you today. I want to, just before I give the floor to Gilles, I want to thank our sponsors first, so Salesforce, Capgemini, and Bank of the West. Thank you very much for being here as a support to us, because we're a non-profit organization, so it means a lot. Anyway, thank you very much. Enjoy the discussion, and we'll see you later in the chat. Thank you, Gilles. I can give you the floor now.
Thank you very much, Laurence, and welcome to you all. Very pleased to have you for this new session. For this, I think it's our eighth session of these talks between France and California on various themes. And as Laurence said, we are addressing today a theme that is will please many of us about winemaking and the wine industry. And we're hosting two big wine specialists, two great women who have succeeded in this industry, in this art. We might say one is in California and the other one is here in France, Pauline Lotte and Julie Caville. So we'll be talking about their personal story, why and how they became chef de cave or winemaking director. They will talk a little bit also about their house, their maison, big brands, Krug and Chandon. And then we'll end by talking about a little bit about the future and how innovation also is impacting this business in various ways. Maybe we'll start with you, Pauline, in California. Pauline Lotte. Hello, Pauline.
Hello. Thank you for having me. I'm doing good. Thank you for having me. Super happy to be part of the discussion with Julie and you, Gilles.
Thank you very much, Pauline, and also Julie joined us at the same time. Julie, you're in the east of France, right?
Yes, right. Good evening. Hello, Pauline.
Good evening to you too, because it's 6 o'clock in the afternoon here in France, and it's raining pretty heavy now in the Paris, because I'm based in Paris. So let's start by your story, because we're very curious about how to know the way you took to become such a big specialist in wine. Pauline, you arrived in California something like what, almost 15 years ago, more than 15 years ago?
Yes, almost 15 years ago. So my story is I grew up in Champagne, and at a very early age, when I was 14 years old, I knew I wanted to be a winemaker. So I grew up on a farm, not necessarily in the heart of the wine industry. My parents and now my brothers are farmers. But I think, growing up in Champagne, you're surrounded with it all your life. And for me, it was an evidence that I wanted to be a winemaker. For me, it was always about making bubbles or making sparkling wine. Obviously, at the time, for me, it was about making champagne. Because I was very intrigued with the process. I think we'll talk about that. But for me, making bubbles as opposed to making still wine is a total different thing. I was intrigued. I mean, I was in love with the region. I love the process of making champagne or sparkling wine. So knowing that I wanted to do that, obviously I did my education based on that. So I did scientific. I went to the University of Reims to learn how to be a sparkling winemaker. And during my study, I did an internship at Moët & Chandon. So I was there for a year. And at the end of my internship, I asked to go abroad. I have to confess that I went abroad because I was pushed by my family to do it. They always told me that if I wanted to have a good job, I needed to speak English. So English was definitely what drove me to actually go outside of the Champagne region. And I find myself in 2006 to go to California. And what was supposed to be a 3-month internship ended up being like a very long time. So I started at Chandon for Harvest, and then I became assistant winemaker, then winemaker, head winemaker, and now winemaking director. So for me, going in California was never something that I anticipate doing because I always thought that my career would be in Champagne. But I discovered a region that I love, and now I'm calling Napa my home because it's been 15 years.
And you never came back.
I only to visit family, but no, I never left. Indeed.
Yeah, and can I ask you your age, Pauline?
So how old am I? I'm soon gonna be 38.
38.
Right.
I think Julie has a very different story because you weren't programmed to become a winemaker, right? You chose a totally different way and a different track at the beginning. Tell us your story, Julie.
Yes, with pleasure. So my story is a bit different from Pauline, and there are also some common points because we crossed once in our life in Champagne. So if you had told me maybe 15 years ago that I would live in Champagne, I would be a winemaker and I would be the cellar master of Champagne Krug, I would have not believed you, of course, because to make a very long story short, you have to come back to my 17-year-old. You know, when you are 17 years old, so I was not from Champagne, I was from the center of France. It was not involved in the wine business, my parents neither. And at 17 years old, you know, you have to choose what you want to do for the rest of your life. And my palate was not ready. I was just discovering white wine and that thing. So I made 5 years in business school. And then I worked 6 years in an advertising agency in Paris. And then during that time, my passion came, you know, first tasting with friends and then with professionals, the first books, the first encyclopedia about wines. Today, there are many different books, but at that time, it was not that many. So this passion came. I met my husband in the same advertising agency, and we made this passion grow and grow until the day we decided to follow our global project of life, living Paris, having a good balance between our private life and professional life, living in a house with a garden and working in the wine industry because it was our new passion. So we decided to, at the first baby, we decided, okay, we leave Paris and we quitted our job. My husband found a job in Champagne. So I said, okay, I had always been interested in sciences. So I wanted to work in the wine industry, but I wanted to make the wine. I wanted to understand why it is so incredible to have so many different choices in the process of elaboration. and you can make so many different wines with the same taste. So it interested me very much to understand that. So I decided to make 4 years of studies more. I was age of 29 years old. I had a little girl from a few months, and I made 4 years of studies more in 3 years, because I made 2 years in one, so in the acceleration, sorry for my English. And during during these 3 years, I made my training period at Moët & Chandon, Dom Pérignon. This is where I met Pauline, and I joined the House of Krug in 2006. And I must admit, there are really two opposite lives. My first and my second life are completely opposed. You know, in the advertising agency, it's turnover. It's very depending on delay and time. It's non-concrete. And here, I'm so happy when I can smell the wine on my hands. So yes, I think I found the perfect job.
What do you enjoy the most in your job now?
I think I have the hugest collection of shoes. It means, because, you know, the Krug house is a very small house. It belongs to LVMH, but it is yet a very small house, like a family house. So it's very, I have a very polyvalent job, you know. So sometimes in the morning I put my security shoes, and then I go to discuss with people on the machine, and then I put some boots to go into the vineyards with some growers, and then I put some shoes with heel to make a tasting with a journalist, and then other shoes to go to Paris and discuss budget. So that's what I love most.
And Pauline, same question to you.
I mean, for sure, I also love the diversity of my job. So, you know, you have to go with the season. So whether it's harvest or it's blending, or, but I think for me, what I enjoy the most about my job is to be able to highlight, you know, the terroir in a bottle. You're able to craft a wine that showcases a region that I love so much. So for me, it's also about the finished product, being part of this, yeah, like you know, when you get awards from your product, that's pretty rewarding as well. But for me, it's really about showcasing the uniqueness of the California and the Napa terroir.
Could you tell us maybe what are the particularities and the specificities of doing wine in California versus doing wine in Champagne?
So, I mean, I think, you know, when I arrived in 2006, I was 23 years old, and the way of working is what really I enjoy a lot, and that's what made me stay in California. And it's the fact that you know, like in California, I don't have as many constraints as I would have, for example, in Champagne. So for me, like, it's about, you know, world of possibilities when it comes to creation, because I don't have to work like within a frame. So I feel a bit more freedom when it comes to making wine. I think for me that's the main difference. But but obviously the main difference for me it's the terroir itself. I am here to make amazing, like exceptional sparkling wine. That's definitely the role. And Chandon is about crafting California, Napa, Sonoma wines. So it's about showcasing a region, and it's definitely not about creating like a champagne in California. So it's about really having our own style, our own personality, and the fact of having maybe less constraints is really what I enjoy the most. But yeah, I think you know, working in the US versus working in France, I think is cultures. That's who we are at Shandong. It's about like immersing in that culture. So for me, like, you know, and I'll talk about the story of Shandong later on, but when I came in California, I wanted to really immerse myself in California, and now everybody's making fun of me because I'm more Californian than I am French now. But it's really about having the courage to learn about a region and really embrace it.
Do you agree with that, Julie? The specificities of working in Champagne versus
Yes, I think
California, for instance.
A common passion and a common obsession, which is giving priority to terroir and express the terroir. What makes, in my sense, a difference is probably that in Champagne there are 270,000 different plots. So it is a very, very morceled, I don't know how, very complex terroir made of many different colors, texture, etc. So
like gardens, right? It's like gardens, right? No.
Exactly. And what I love best in this part of wine region is because you have to work with all these wine growers. Krug is a small house, a small number of bottles, and yet we work with hundreds of different characters, hundreds of different growers that have all themselves their own characters, their own choices, their own specificities, their own plots, etc. So I love that part of the job because you will see with the story of Krug that the philosophy is to compress all the individualities that Champagne can offer us in one bottle. So it gives a tribute to the diversity of the terroir in Champagne and to the diversity of its growers. And this is what I like really much and make, I think, a difference in with other regions.
A little mess. Just a short message to the audience. You have a chat on your screen. Do not hesitate to ask your questions, and will ask the questions to our two speakers today, Pauline Lotte from Chandon USA and Julie Caville from Maison Krug. These are two houses from two maisons from they belong to the same group, right? LVMH. Could you tell us a little bit more, Pauline, about Chandon and the history of the brand and of Maison Chandon?
Sorry, I didn't hear the question. We had a connection issue.
Seems like we have. Sorry for by the way, sorry. We sometimes experiencing some little problems with our connections, so maybe it's a little bit bumpy sometimes. I was asking the question, saying that the two brands are part of the same group, LVMH, the French group, but they have also, of course, their own very particular history. Could you tell us more about Chandon?
Yeah, of course. So, Chandon is, not a lot of people know that, but we are one of 6 wineries. So there is 6 wineries in the world. And the story of Chandon started with Robert Jean de Vogüé, who was a leader of Moët & Chandon at the time, that had the idea to go abroad, like realized that there were amazing vineyard of Champagne and really wanted to by
we're losing you, Pauline.
I'm sorry?
We're losing you. We little connection problems. We lost you maybe 15 seconds.
Can you?
Ago. Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay. So I was I was explaining that Chandon is one of 6 wineries around the world, and it was founded by adventurous people that were really looking beyond convention and remixing cultures to create sparkling wine in unexpected lands. So their journey started in 1959 they were on the quest of finding amazing vineyards. And their first vineyard they created was in Argentina back in 1959. That quest didn't stop in Argentina. They continued their epic journey in 1973, where they founded Chandon, California. Mm-hmm. Then later on, they founded Chandon, Brazil, Chandon, Australia in 1986. And recently in India and China, so 2013 and 2014. So there is really something unique about us is the fact that we are a community of wineries, and that's something that it's quite. We are the only one to be this way. And they really looked at the quest of amazing vineyard. They set themselves in like amazing, unexpected region. So, you know, in Argentina, it's by the Andes. So it's in Brazil, it's by the Serra Agacha in southern Brazil. Mm. In India, we're in the Western Ghats. In China, it's the Inland Mountain. And then in Australia, it's the Yarra Valley. And obviously in California, it's the Napa Valley. So it's really about crafting exceptional sparkling wine for from amazing vineyards. But really what makes us unique, like I said, is those 6 wineries, the community of winemakers that I'm very fortunate to be part of. So we get to constantly like communicate and talk to each other. And when you think about it, it's a domain where like the sun never sets because we are so far from each other. I mean, we're on 6 wineries, 6 continents. So for us, Chandon is about crafting exceptional sparkling wine, but really being rooted in the country we are in. So for me, it's about crafting wines that are really about California, and I really want to showcase that terroir in our wine. So we are a maison, but we all have our own identity, and that's what's great. So, you know, like our house really remains on a vision that was beyond convention, a world of possibilities. So today, you know, like this is the open-mindedness that our founders had is still something that drives us today for sure. So specifically in Chandon, California, this was founded in 1973. And in 1973, there was not many wineries in Napa Valley. So there was just a handful. It was the very beginning. And our founder really had a big, massive vision on the project. So they bought 7 acres of land in 3 regions, which is 3 amazing regions. It's the Carneros region, which is south of Napa, by the Bay of San Francisco. It's by Montveeder, which is close to Napa, and then in Yountville, which is where the winery is located at. So they did those vineyards and vision for the winery. So we're located in the heart of Napa Valley. They opened the first visitor center, and I encourage you to come and visit us because the site is actually quite spectacular. When you enter at the winery, you know, it's really around nature because that was the beginning, and that was the idea from the very beginning. And we also have started so we're the first French-owned winery in Napa Valley back in 1973. And when they founded the vineyard, actually, it was even before naming like appellations. So Carneros was not even an appellation. It came like later on in 1983. So very, very fortunate with our vineyards. Like I said, we have a visitor center, which is great because for me, that's the ability for me to meet consumer, which is great. We've also started, we're the first winery to start the wine club, and wine club is obviously something that is quite common now in the US. So it's the ability for consumer to have access to exclusive wines. So we're crafting wine especially for wine club members. So now we've got over like almost 50 years of expertise and experience in Napa Valley. So yeah.
Thank you, Pauline. Different story at Maison Krug, I imagine.
Yes, a different story. I won't tell you the whole story of the 6th generation of the family. The Krug family.
Although it's a great story, right? It's really very interesting.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So our founder, Joseph Krug, just few words. He used to work for another champagne house, and he used to travel a lot to meet his clients. And what we found, it was always the same story. He was disappointed because some of his clients used to tell him, the last delivery was too acidic compared to this one, or the last one had too many bubbles, it was not the same, etc. And he wrote in a letter, and this is for me the first stone of the House of Krug, he wrote a letter saying that I really feel that we will never succeed unless we can offer a champagne of undisputed quality every single year. And he said, okay, I cannot stand that my clients have to wait for a good year, a good climate, a good weather in August to experience the ultimate pleasure with Krug en Cuvée. He said, I want to be able to offer the very best every single year. So that with this idea that he created the House of Krug, and that he created a cuvée that doesn't existed at that time. We know everything about that because he wrote his personal story and his belief in a dark cherry notebook for his son, who was age of 4 years at that time. So in this little notebook, there are two things that impressed me. The first one, he said, every maison should create 2 cuvées of the same undisputed quality. And he said there mustn't be any hierarchy between the cuvées, and this is still the case. At Krug, there is no hierarchy. It's the same red carpet treatment for all our cuvées, but it is a different expression of what nature offered us. So undisputed quality is the same quality, and he said a good maison should have two cuvées. The cuvée number 1, who should be recreated every single year beyond the very notion of vintage. This is Krug Grande Cuvée, what we call today Krug Grande Cuvée. It is really an orchestra playing the full music of champagne, the full expression of what champagne can give you in one glass. Okay, and a cuvée number 2 of the same distinction, but according to the circumstances of one particular year. So this is the story of a vintage. It is the music of the year played by Krug. So this being said, nowadays Krug, the House of Krug, is the only house to offer a prestige cuvée every single year since the creation of the house in 1843. So how do we do today to perpetuate the dream of our founder? Probably if some of you know our champagne, you probably know that our champagne at Krug are very charismatic. They give you everything with the first sip. They are very expressive, made of contrast, flavor, texture, savors, different savors. And to make this champagne, we need individualities that compose the blend to be themselves with a strong character, with a lot of personality, with a lot of typicities. And we have one word when we speak with the growers, either the growers that cultivate our own vineyard or either the growers we buy some grapes too. We always say the same thing: cultivate the differences. please cultivate all the differences, understand what makes this plot so unique compared to this one, and try to obtain the very highest expression possible of this different plots. And the objective is really to have the hugest contrasted palettes of grapes and then of wines, to have the freedom for the recreation of our cuvée. Because as I told you previously, Krug Grande Cuvée, so the reason of the creation of the house is really to offer the fullest music of Champagne. So it is always composed between 150 to 200 different wines that we've selected among 11, 12, 13, 14 different years of harvest. Usually we say that we need 20 years to craft a single bottle of Krug Grande Cuvée. So probably the first thing you learn when you join Krug is patience, because I joined Krug in 2006, and this is the first time this year that I am able to taste the 3 creations that we've made that year in 2006, because the vintage 2006 at Krug have been allowed to leave the cellar a few months ago only. So that's patience is the first thing you learn.
16 years, well, 15 years, right? Yeah, I guess that answers the question of Frederick, who was asking what are the difference in winemaking between the two regions. But we have a lot of questions there, and maybe I can pick one, another one, very actual about the climate change and how it impacts the production of wine around the world, and especially in California with the big fires that you had specifically this year. Who wants to take the question? You can start, maybe, Pauline?
Yeah. I mean, I think the difference between the two regions is definitely on the terroir itself. So, you know, like obviously the region of Napa Valley is quite different from the region of Champagne. So I think it starts there. For me, what I love the most about Napa is the fact that it's a region that is extremely diverse. You in one region you're able to make sparkling wine, but you also make still wine. I mean, Napa is extremely famous for its Chardonnay or its Cabernet, and the reason for that is because it's full of different soil, but different microclimate as well. So you travel from 20 miles from one city to the other, and you have total different soil, depth of soil, and it's the norther you go, the warmer it gets. So I think this is the real difference between the two regions is definitely where we're making the wine. And then, so at Chandon, we're using the same three varieties, so Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, Meunier. We're using the same method. There is variances in techniques, obviously, but I will say the main difference for me is the grapes itself and the terroir. To answer the second part of your question about climate change, for me, climate change is definitely like one of the things that is urgent for us to address. In the past, I used to say that you know, vintages in California, at least for sparkling wine, were not as different from year on year. Most recently, this is no longer the case. We're seeing like seasons that are no longer what they should be. I mean, in California, you know, like resources like water is essential. So making sure we're not using as much water and making sure it's actually raining during the winter, because it only rains during the winter. We're on a Mediterranean climate. You know, we have now we have frost the season stopped early, so it's not rare to have bud break in end of February or March, and then that means that you could have frost and lose most of your crop. So the seasons are not as even as they used to be. So obviously, as winemakers, it definitely keep us on our toes. And then obviously most recently for us in California was the fires. So this has been quite a challenge. So we have a big fire back in 2017, and then this year happens as well. So I mean, I was part of the lucky one in a sense that I was done with the sparkling harvest before the first fire. I finished the still wine because we still make still wine as well for Shandong before actually the day of the second fire. But it doesn't mean that in the future I won't be as lucky as I was this year. So for us and as a region in Napa Valley, I think this is definitely one of our big challenges. How do we fight climate change? How do we protect our resources like water in California?
Julie, you want to see the same thing?
Yeah, the climate change is the same. I mean, in France versus California, so we cannot deny the climate change. The wine changed since the past decades. We can see that. We can analyze that. And I must say that for the moment, which is not satisfying at all, but for the moment, it benefits a little to the Champagne region because it means that we have less disease. I mean, these past years, it's very rare to have 2 years or 3 vintage with disease, with rot, etc. So for the moment, it benefits a little, this climate change from that point of view. Obviously, this is not something we can want for the future. So we work on the short and mid-term and the long term. For the short and mid-term, it is a good challenge in a way because it forces us to reinvent our winemaking process, and more especially our date of harvest. And this is our obsession at Krug because we have a very low interventionist winemaking at Krug, so we don't have any means to correct, enrich, modified, or whatever what we've obtained at the harvest. So we mustn't miss this operation to be at the right moment, at the right place, to pick the right plot at the right moment, which is probably the best luxury at Krug, being able to make the choices regarding only the excellence and not the logistic part. This is really a good thing. So we work a lot in eating the berries. We eat and eat and eat the berries. We follow the evolution of the aromas, and when we have the feeling to bite into a citrus fruit, just after there is no more vegetal notes, just before it turns into a white or a yellow fruit, we have to go and pick the grapes. So because usually we used to follow the level of sugar and the level of acidity, and we had to take the right date with enough sugar and enough acidity. But today with the climate change, it's completely different. Some years we have a lot of sugar and no expression, no aromatics, this connection between the different maturities. So this is for the short term. The mid-term, we work on pruning. We work hard to make the roots go down, because we know that it is preferable for the vines when it's very hot. We work on putting some trees to make shadow. We work so different things on the vines. And for the long term, we cannot work alone. I mean, this is not the Krug house which will discover the new grape variety or whatever. So all the champagne, we have an interprofession, and we work all together to find some other solution. So yes, we work on it a lot.
Let's talk about the consumers' behaviors and tastes for a little bit. Is there anything in these changes of habits that have that you have observed over the past few years, and how does that impact or influence your work as you are about you're planning?
I mean,
Pauline.
Oh, go ahead, Pauline. Go ahead.
Okay, it's up to you. I mean, I think for me, like one of the chance that I have at Chandon is the fact that we have a home where we welcome visitors all the time, all year long. Obviously, with COVID, that has changed a little bit. I mean, we're still open, but I had the ability to meet consumer on a daily basis, looking at going to meet them, you know, at the tasting room or things like that, and being able to meet them and really understand, you know, the future of it. I think we were talking about the difference between US and France. I quickly realized in 2006 that in the US it was about the definitely thing at Chandon we're very consumer. Yes, we have seen changes over the years since I've been there. I think like you know, like we've also increased the quality of our wines, but the sweetness level of our wine has decreased a lot in result of what we've seen with consumers. And I think like the trend of what we're saying, it's about authenticity. It's about like the transparency. People want to know, to rely on brands that have a story to share. So for me, it's about you know, what we are doing as well. So you know, like Julie and I are two winemakers, so it's always difficult for us to answer this question. But what I feel like we see is like I said, like a thirst for transparency. A thirst also for mindful drinking. I think people really cares a lot about what they are drinking nowadays. It's about, you know, like the authenticity of the drink. It's about sharing moments. There's a lot about naturality on the wines as well. People are looking for that. So yeah, I think it's a matter like as a brand to respond also about what consumer like and wants, and I think mindful drinking is definitely what we're seeing as a trend in the future.
I'd like to pick the question from Melanie Thomas. How is the difference between champagne and sparkling wines perceived by the consumers? And do they know the difference? And what do they know?
Do they know the difference? Yes. I think this is something like, well, yes and no, it depends, obviously. But this is something for us that we've been trying to educate a lot. You know, talking about the difference between champagne, sparkling wine in California, Prosecco, Cava, because there is a lot of difference out there. Yes, there is still a lot of people that call anything champagne, for sure. Everything that has bubble is called champagne. And I think this is one of the big things that we have to educate on, because like I said, it's very different. Again, like what we're doing at Chandon is not about reproducing champagne. Like we want to have our own unique style. So I think it's all about education and trying to explain them the difference between those wines.
And Laurence apparently has a lot of questions backstage, and that's a very good question. You could come after Eric Lebel is quite a challenge. Could you explain, Julie, how you tried to be yourself after Eric and bring your own style?
Well, bring my own style. You know, I have always this question: Are you frustrated not to be able to bring your own style? But in fact, you know, arriving somewhere and changing everything, it's very easy. I mean, I can do it, you can do it, all of us can do it. But being able to achieve the same level of excellence year after year, circumstances of circumstances, vintage after vintage, it is something which excites me more, which is very challenging, and this is what I prefer. But you know, the succession has been really, really low. I joined the Crook House in 2006, and probably 1.5 years later, we choose ourselves. We knew it would be the succession. So at that time, since 2007, we begin well, Eric began to transmit his knowledge step by step. And it was like if he used to be on the stage, I was in the backstage, and then he invited me to come on the stage a little, and then more often, and now I am on the stage. He take a step forward, and he's still in the backstage, and this is really comfortable for myself. So there has been no really scoop or change. It's like a marriage, you know, the day after your marriage. You are sure you will be very different, but in fact it is exactly the same. And in January, when I succeeded to Eric, it is the same. But just to answer in one word to the question, do I want to change something or to make the same thing? I have two responsibility, I think. Obviously, have the continuity, how to preserve the fundamental I've been heritated from Eric and from the previous one. So these really are the fundamentals. It will not change. The style of the concubé will not change, but it's not enough, because my second role is really to make an acclimatization. I mean, I must achieve the change, the necessary change, to adapt to our environment, which is changing also. So the acclimatization, the change will take place definitely in the vineyard, in the climate change. And we are working on a very big project just here, which will make the 50 next years of the winemaking at Crook. So this is really a project for the excellence of the wine, for the people who work there, and for the environment. So these are the main challenge I have to conduct.
Oh, and probably one of the other big challenge you have to confront is the environmental issues and the your of course the both brands are very highly committed to these questions, and the impact, your own impact on what are the urgencies in that domain? Oh, someone.
There is a hacker.
I don't know who that is. Pauline, you want to take that question first, and then Lee?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, honestly, like the biggest challenges has to be part of the environment. I mean, we talked about climate change as well. You know, like all of our vineyard, like climate change and environment in general at Moët Hennessy is something that we obviously take extremely seriously. Like Julie and I actually see each other quite frequently, because this is we exchange a lot as a group. So we have a lot of forum multiple times a year. All of our vineyard, like, you know, we work on sustainability, so all of our vineyard are certified sustainable. We're working with our growers to do the same thing. You know, us, it's about diversity as well, diversity of the landscape. It's about protecting our soil. I mean, our vineyards are the biggest asset we have. So everything vineyard to protect the soil, regenerate our soil is very important. So we're extremely committed to the sustainable development. I mean, we have multiple certification, local certification, and this is a big, like, global engagement for us. You know, like we've stopped using herbicides. We are using, you know, we want to neutralize our carbon footprint. In California, we're using natural pollinators. So when you come in the vineyard, there is many owl boxes everywhere. So, you know, environmental is one of the biggest challenge. I think for me, the other challenge that I have is as a brand like Chandon, like the consumer centric. It's about always being relevant. You know, our founder was always saying that we need to be a quarter of an hour in advance. So I'm making wine for a winery that we're the leader in the sparkling category in the US, and obviously we want to remain the leaders, and our role is to always you know, innovate, and it's always like being the first, and this is what I love the most about my job as well, because you get to be extremely creative. Like I said, we in California, I feel like I have the leeway to be able to make wine in a different way. So it's always about reinventing ourselves and creating like the next trend and what's next. So this is the big thing. I mean, we're talking about consumer. That's definitely the essence at the winery. For me, that's also where I get my inspiration from when I get to make new wines. This year we released 2 new wines. We've made on pet nat, which was the first time we've done it at Chandon, which was using the ancestral method to make wine. We've made another wine which was a by the bay wine. So it's always about innovation, creativity, and that's for me my biggest challenge, I would say, for the next few years.
Julie, you want to add something?
Yeah, I really share what Pauline said, and I would add something that Pauline knows perfectly well also. We work hard on viticulture, sustainability, but sustainability is also a matter of people, a matter of every step in the process, not only in the viticulture. So we work on water consumption. We have terrific programs about that. We work on eco-designed boxes. We work on green transportation. We avoid all what impacts very high. For example, our air transportation, it represents only less than 0.2%. So at every step, we have to take a decision regarding each time this parameter of sustainability. And we work also, and this is one of my favorite work. We work on people, because sustainability is also how to preserve the people you work with. So we have a project which is called Keys, which is a reflection on how to transmit the keys to the next generation. So the know-how, but how to comport, what are the values, what are, etc. So that's great. Sustainability at every step in the whole scope.
Okay, we're near the.
This is not a subject that has been that must be treated apart. This is always the same story, and what about sustainability? But in fact, what I prefer is at every moment in your day, when you take a decision, it should be natural to ask what is the impact, or have I think about that.
So just one last question before we wrap up. It's unfortunately it's nearly an hour since we started this discussion. Very personal question, but what are your next frontiers in terms of wine making? I asked the question to both of you.
Okay.
No
Julie, you want to start? Or you want me to do it?
My next front quote.
I mean,
yeah, go.
I mean, I think I've touched on it on the previously. Like for me, it's I don't feel like there is that many frontier because I work in Napa. But for me, it's continue to innovate and being creative. Like I cannot really be a lot of things happening on Shandong next year. So whether it's coming from a new look or also new products, we're doing a lot of like cocktails at the winery or things like that. But it's always about creating new products and being. I mean, hopefully, I would love to create a new trend in on sparkling wine in the future. So I feel like there is a world of possibility in front of us. I think like creativity in sparkling wine. I mean, I feel like everything is open. I mean, the world has changed recently. The way of consuming has changed a lot. I mean, to start with, like everyone is at home, consuming at home. And I think how consumer behavior are changing. So for me, that's the moment at right now to be able to innovate and propose new things.
Well, my answer will be a little bit different, but that's the beauty of the thing. I don't know what is my next frontier, but what I know is something which is very difficult is how to make sure that the House of Krug will remain with the same values, with the same, the perennity of the house, because, you know, people change, the environment is changing, the legal thing is changing, everything is changing. And you have to keep in mind that, for example, here in Reims, on the ground, on the floor, it's like, it goes very with a lot of speed because of the COVID, because of all these things. It's very stressful. But here in the cellar, it's completely different. All the decisions I took this year with the COVID-19, all the decisions will be judged in 2030. So you see, it's a completely different mindset. And my job is really to make sure that regardless this environment, the Krug House will remain the same, will make no compromise at all and never.
Thank you very much. Well, this will be the ending point of our conversation, and I'll give the very last word to Laurence. Thank you to you, Pauline. Thank you to you, Julie. We had a great time. So if Laurence could come back on stage for the final word.
Thank you, and thank you to all of people who are listening to us.
Thank you, Julie.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.
Laurence? We don't hear you, Laurence. I think your mic is up.
Oh, thank you. Yes, you're right. I was on mute. Thank you very much, Gilles, for the very interesting discussion. Thank you to Pauline and Julie for their time today. It was very interesting, and I hope you all enjoyed it. Of course, we will repost this interview, so you will have the opportunity to watch it again if you missed some parts. So thank you very much, everyone, for participating this morning, for asking questions and being engaged. We'll keep you posted for the next edition of France versus California or France versus Silicon Valley, depending on the topic. And we'll see you soon. I want to thank you again, our sponsors, Bank of the West, Capgemini, and Salesforce for supporting us, and also all the team of the Chamber for the organization. and hope to see you soon. Thank you, Gilles, again. Thank you, for partnering with us on this.